This is John Cola with Growing Your Greens, and I have a special announcement for you guys. Until May 25th at midnight, I'm offering some t-shirts for you guys. Growing Your Greens official t-shirts, limited time only. I don't know if they'll ever be back again because I'm not in the business of selling t-shirts. I'm here to teach you guys about how to grow your own food. But anyways, you could help me out so that I can buy a farm with my girlfriend and you guys get a t-shirt at the same time. 100% recycled, 100% made in America. They fit me great, that's why I selected them. I've had the same brand t-shirts for over 2 years now, and they wear really well and wash really well and don't rip and all this other kind of stuff. They hold up really well. That's why I'm offering them. Click over right here to get yours today. Alright, this is John Cola with GrowingYourGreens.com. Bit of another exciting episode for you, coming at you from my girlfriend's parents' backyard, square foot, raised bed garden. And I just got them, I just got done helping them out, planting some cool stuff out. Today we planted some culantro, which is a really good substitute for growing cilantro in the hot summer season. Grows great in the tropics. That's where I originally came across it. I think I was in Puerto Rico of all places. Culantro, well, we got some sour gherkins in the bed on the other side, and then on behind me here we have all the perennial vegetables, Southeast Asian perennial vegetables. Check the link down below if I remember to put a link down below to the nursery in Houston where I got all these guys. You know, we don't want to grow standard vegetables like lettuces and things in the summer in Houston when it's hot and humid, right? Not really going to work too effectively. There's ways you could do that, of course, but why fight nature? Let's work with nature and grow the plants that are going to easily grow and thrive during the summer and give you bountiful harvests of greens. Anyways, we're not even going to talk about those today. What we are going to talk about is once you guys get your plants planted from plant starts or even seedlings, the number one thing I recommend you guys do to get your plants off to a good start, it's like breastfeeding your baby. Breastfeeding your baby, probably one of the best things you guys could do for your babies. And for your baby plants, the best thing you could do, in my opinion, is to douse them with a dowsing rod. No, with compost tea, actually. So what we're gonna do next, we're gonna go ahead and show you guys the setup I got for my girlfriend's parents to start making and brewing their own compost tea. And we're gonna show you guys from start to finish on how easy it is. You guys could set it up to brew it yourself and then distribute it onto your plants with something as simple as a watering can. So anyways, let's go ahead and head into the garage area and show you guys how we're gonna brew some compost tea today. So before I even share with you guys how to brew your own compost tea, I wanna show you guys how to start to brew your own compost tea. The number one thing you'll need is something like this right here, is a filter for your hose spigot. You know, it comes out the wall and you know, here they're getting city water. City water has added for safety measures for, you know, human public health safety, things like chlorine, or worse, unfortunately, chloramines. And it's the chloramine or the chlorine's job to basically kill the bacteria, protozoa, and things that could cause waterborne illness. It's not fun. If you've ever been to Africa and have had one of those, it's definitely not fun. So I'm glad in one respect that they put these in to the water system, but on the other respect, in my opinion, and based on my research, it's not good for us to drink that stuff, or even worse, brew some compost tea with it, because it'll kill the bacteria and the microbes, maybe not all the way, but you know, it'll reduce the amount that they can reproduce. So I want to increase, you know, my microbial activity, not decrease them. So I do recommend getting some kind of water filter. Today we're using the Boogie Blue carbon water filter, and this is their basic model. They have a more expensive model. That would work too, but this one lasts not quite as long, and it's also costs less money, more cost effective. Now if you don't want to invest in a garden filter, which I would encourage you guys to invest in, not only for brewing compost tea, but also just for simply, you know, watering your garden. So you could water with, you know, unchlorinated water, and also the carbon filter will also remove other potential toxins from the water before watering your plants that you guys are going to eat, right? The other thing you could do is actually just set a bucket of water out, like in a 5-gallon bucket, and aerate it overnight. And if you have chlorine, not chloramine, it'll probably air out overnight. You know, you could get, if you're pretty anal and crazy, you could get bottled water, which probably, depending on where you go, you know, you could fill up a 5-gallon bucket at a local, you know, water vending machine thing for $1, that'd probably be a good investment. But you know, just buying a one-time filter, $30 or something. Here's the tip: if you don't want to get the Boogie Blue, you know, just go down and get a good RV water filter. You know, they're kind of similar, and probably not going to last as long as the media meant for gardens, but you know, that'll do in a pinch, right? So once you got your water filter installed, you're going to go ahead and take a 5-gallon bucket, make sure it's clean inside, and we're just going to go ahead and fill it up with some water. And it helps if we turn on the hose spigot. Now, if you're kind of anal like I am, right, if you want to get maximum filtration out of your garden filter, what you want to do, instead of turning it up full blast, you want to like really turn it down. You want to turn it down, like not all the way off, but just on a little bit. What this does, it slows down the flow rate of the water. And when the flow rate of the water is slowed down, that means there's going to be more filter contact time, which means you'll get better filtration. Does this really make a difference? I don't know, but you know, I don't like doing it full blast. I got some time to you know, hang out. So we're gonna turn this down to a nice slow stream. We'll be back at you once we got our 5-gallon bucket filled up with the next step. So the next part of making compost tea is pretty simple. Basically, you're gonna need a couple things. You're gonna need power, so we got an outlet here. You're gonna need a cool place out of the direct sun, you know, optimally, I don't know, just the temperature would be comfortable to you. So I'm doing it here in a workshop garage area, out of the direct sun, out of the elements, out of the weather. We don't want to get like rain or wind or anything blowing into our compost tea. Now, it doesn't need to be entirely sterile per se, but you should start out with a clean bucket and some clean water, and try not to like have all kinds of other crud and junk in the bucket, right? Because we want to basically take the compost tea, whether you're making it yourself or whether you're going to use the stuff I'm using today. I'm using the Boogie Brew Pro compost tea. This is the compost tea I've been using, I mean, for like 5 years now, and it's just like the best stuff. It's so good that I actually even interviewed the formulator and creator of the Boogie Brew product, Josh Cunnings, in his Boogie Bunker, and we go over all the different ingredients that he uses in the compost tea to make his tea, so that you guys could make your own compost tea similar to this one if you don't want to buy yours. And I honor Josh for sharing his recipe with the world, because he wants to see everybody use the compost tea, whether it's they're buying his or whether they're making their own, because this will get people away from using chemical fertilizers. You know, the main benefit of the compost tea, in my opinion, is not to like give fertilizer to the plants, like to add nutrition to the plants per se, because on here it says not intended for human or animal consumption, blah blah blah. Oh, this product and its intended use is expressed in soil as an auxiliary soil amendment, not a fertilizer. So some people say, oh, compost tea, that's a fertilizer. Well, it's on here that it's not sold as a fertilizer, but that being said, in my opinion, based on my research and based on what I've seen, the Boogie Brew compost tea adds fertility to your land. So if it's adding fertility to your land, then in my opinion, it is a fertilizer, but that may not meet legal definitions, because a fertilizer has to have those NPK numbers, you know, in our bureaucratic red tape BS, should I say, system that we live in for the most part. So anyways, the main benefit of the compost tea is simply this: it's going to add trace minerals, number one, in small amounts, which is good because they're trace minerals. They don't need to be in your garden in high amounts. That being said, I like to pack my garden full of rock dust and other things, but this will add some of that to your garden. But more importantly than just the trace minerals, it adds a plethora and tons of different microbiology, or the microbiome, whether that's bacteria and fungi and all these other different creatures that basically are your labor force for your garden. They work when you are asleep. It's like the Santa Claus song. He knows when you are sleeping. He knows when you are awake. He knows if you are bad or good. And you know, these soil microbes work around the clock to basically break down the organic matter, like in your compost. They break down things like the trace minerals, you know, in the soil, and they make it into a water-soluble form so that your plants can uptake this nutrition and unlock it from the nutrients that are in your compost, in your cow manure, in all this stuff that's already in your garden. And if you're using chemical fertilizers, those are all water soluble, so that you don't need the bacteria component to get those into your plants. The problem with the water soluble fertilizers is once you water your garden down, those water soluble fertilizers will dissolve in water and it'll be washed away. So now you got to keep feeding those water soluble fertilizers and subverting the whole natural system on how nature works. Furthermore, when those NPK and chemically produced, factory produced fertilizers made out of natural gas and other petroleum-based products, when they wash away, they cause big damage to the environment and to the water table and all these things. So that's why I teach you guys, organic biologic gardening. A lot of organic gardening just says, yeah, throw on compost, John, throw on compost. That has enough bacteria in there. Well, based on what I've seen and experienced visiting farms and places, yes, compost absolutely has some biology in there. And depending on where your compost from and how it's made and all this kind of stuff, it may have a lot or a little. This is your cheap insurance policy to ensure your garden gets off to a running and jumping start, right? If you don't have the biology in your compost for whatever reason, you got crappy compost, it's not rich in the trace minerals, this will help kind of jumpstart your plants to get them off the ground running. And that's very important, much like a baby. We wouldn't just kick a baby out of the house when they're 1 year old, you wait until they're 15 or 16 and then kick them out because they've been matured and they've gone through their process. And especially when your plants are small, little plant starts, from seedlings or planting from plant starts like I did today, you want to get them acclimated to the new soil and to growing in your new situation. And in my belief and experience, this product helps dramatically. In this product, there's ingredients such as worm castings, and that's the main way, in my belief, that you should make compost tea, whether using the Boogie Brew brand or others. I would use worm castings. They are much more biologically active than just straight compost or any kind of manure. And furthermore, some manures, if you're using raw manures to make a compost tea, you may be breeding not good bacteria, in my opinion. It also has sea kelp powder, a wealth of nutrients, soybean meal, alfalfa meal, rock phosphate, langbonite, volcanic ash, green sand, kelp meal, and trace ocean minerals. So this adds the trace mineral component, which is an essential component, because that also helps the microbes in the compost tea flourish, because they have all kinds of food source to eat. In addition, they also have things like the composted wood chips, which actually is the source for the fungal dominated microbes in the compost tea, and many people fail to get enough fungal dominated microbes in their soil. Now, I'm not saying your soil should be fungal dominated, I'm saying you should have some fungal action and fungus in your soil growing, which is not the same as like mushrooms. And yeah, it has evaporated cane juice sugar, which actually helps feed the microbes while you're brewing, and humic acid, all kinds of cool stuff in there. Yeah, biochar. But yeah, this really can help activate and get your compost running and get your system running, especially if you're new into gardening. Now, if you've been gardening for a long time and you have like really good soil, adding a compost tea may not make a difference. But here's the thing: for most people I've visited, experienced, and a lot of my viewers and comments I've heard, compost tea is probably the #1 thing you guys should do, even before, should I say, buying rock dust, because this has some trace minerals in there, and the rock dust takes some time to break down, but this you'll see more immediate results. And yeah, check the link down below to the link on the open source compost tea, and also a battle that me and Josh had, rock dust versus compost tea. I personally think I won, but compost tea is definitely good stuff, and that's why I got my girlfriend's parents some today. So in the bag, what you're gonna get is you're gonna get our little brew bag. So you can use like a paint strainer bag if you don't get this cool burlap sack that's 100% compostable when you're done. Also, you're gonna get brew your own compost tea, and it talks about why compost tea is important, and also very simple directions on how to make it. And then inside here, in the new formula, you're going to have two parts. You're going to have the boogie base. Oops, and it's leaking a little bit. And you're going to have the boogie boost. So each one of these components used to come in one bag, but then the shelf life was reduced drastically. So they were bagging it into separate bags so that they don't activate during shipment or during storage on a store shelf to sell you guys. The other thing that I'm going to encourage you guys to do is take a look. I do like that the Boogie Brew Compost Tea actually tells you use by date. Now, if you don't use it by this date, it doesn't mean you should throw it away. Never do that. Still brew your compost tea. It's just not going to be as active as it is if you brewed it by the use by date. And be wary of compost tea companies that don't have a use by date, because some of these microbes are fragile and they may not last forever sitting on a store shelf in a bag. And that's why I like the Boogie Brew, because the majority is, they'll send you the product direct. And if they're sending it to direct, it didn't sit on their store shelf for 3 months. Josh is often behind making the stuff fresh to ship out to people. So yeah, he ships it really fresh. It's gonna have a long shelf life for you guys. And I do encourage you guys to do this like at least minimum once a month. I try to do it once a month. I travel so much. I would rather do it like once a week, like every Friday I brew compost tea and spread it on my garden. And if you guys can't do that, do it like twice a month, every other week. That'd be great, or minimally once a month. You will see a difference by doing that. So, but before we mix these guys up, which we're gonna basically take a half cup of each, we're gonna be brewing the compost tea. So, a lot of people just might like put the compost tea in the bag and just like let the bag sit in the water and whatnot and just let it seep overnight. This is not the compost tea that I encourage you guys to make. We wanna make an aerated compost tea. Very important. It'll work if you just do let it sit, but I like to aerate the compost tea for best results. I've seen drastic growth and multiplication of the biology just because they're getting some air. I mean, think about it. How long could we live without air underwater? That's why I like to do an aerated tea. So for that, we'll need just a few things. This is the Active Aqua pump. This is an 8-liter pump. So this is the mini brew kit that the Boogie Brew company sells. I'll put a link down below, boogiebrew.net/GYG. You can get the special pricing I've negotiated with Josh at Boogie Brew for the mini kit, which is the bare minimum I would recommend for you guys if you guys don't have the extra money to go for the full-blown kit. The mini kit could basically drive one 5-gallon bucket. I have the larger kit with the larger pump, and that drives basically 10 gallons at a time. That's what I prefer to do. One pump could do 2 buckets. On this pump it could do 1 bucket. And this pump actually has 2 outlets. So we got the tubing here, and we're going to plug the tubing into one outlet, plug the tubing into the other outlet. Super simple, super easy. And then we got these air stones. So I encourage you guys to get the largest air stone you guys can with this kit. It comes with 2 smaller air stones. And if you do want to try to source these products locally, you can check a local hydroponic shop. Many places will have air stones as well as the Active Aqua brand of pump. Next, we're just going to go ahead and plug this air stone into the line. Super simple, super easy. And now these air stones are clean. So once you're done brewing the compost tea, I do encourage you guys to bubble your air stones in clean water and or scrub them out with a nylon bristle brush. Don't use any kind of like metal brush. It'll like mess up the holes on here. It's important to keep your air stones clean after every use, because there may be some funky junk on the air stone that may impact negatively your second batch. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drop one of the air stones into the water, and the other air stone we're going to temporarily put in the water, but it's not going to go there for sure when we're brewing. We're going to go ahead and plug this pump in. And we're going to crank this up, air control, not on low, but we're going to crank it up to high. So that's on high. We got a nice bubbling in there. Set that aside. Now I did put the bucket in just like a cardboard box in case there's any overflow, so it won't stain the ground here. Depending on how high you fill the bucket and how the temperature where you're brewing it at and the microbes, it may foam or may not foam. If it doesn't foam, that's not really a problem. As long as you got, non-expired compost tea, it means it's working. I like to generally fill it up to like maybe about like an inch and a half, 2 inches from the top, so that actually we have some extra space so it actually doesn't blow over and foam over. So now that we got our brew bag nice and wet, because otherwise if you don't pre-wet it, it's going to float on the top. All we need to do is open this baby up, and then we're going to go ahead and take about a half cup of each of these guys. So I think this little thing in here that the air stones came out of, that looks about like a half cup to me. So we'll have a nice generous heaping portion. Now, you know, using more is not necessarily better. If you use too much, you're just basically wasting product, and you won't be able to brew as many batches. I would much rather you guys, you know, brew the appropriate amount of compost tea and brew more batches than to try to like, I'm brewing an extra strong dose by putting extra stuff in. It doesn't work that way. Sorry. All right, next, that was the boogie base. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the boogie boost. I like these little measuring cups here, nice and handy. And fill that up, nice heaping amount there. And we're going to go ahead and put that into our brew bag. Then we're going to go ahead and draw this little, oh, we're not going to draw that closed yet, because what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take one of these air stones, because you get two. We're going to drop one into the bag. Then we're going to go ahead and close this up, drop it in there, and now we have the bag is bubbling. And now we're going to go ahead and tie this off to the handle here so it doesn't like drop in. And I like to like kind of dunk it like we're dunking a tea bag, otherwise some of the dry mixture will come out. So I want to get it all the way at the bottom. So once you got your tea brewing in there and it's running, you're going to want to probably let it go for about 24 hours until you stop the pumps, clean off your air stones, and then distribute the tea into your garden. If you run it for too short of a time or too long of a time, it's not optimal. Because what's going on right now as we're bubbling it, the air encourages the microbial growth inside there, and as they are growing, they're like, we're growing, we're hungry, man, we're gonna eat. And what they're eating are the sugars and some of the other nutrients that are in this compost tea and the minerals and whatnot. And what's happening is if you're thinking this is like a line graph right here, the microbes start maybe here and they start to multiply because they're really happy and they're eating, right? It's kind of like cats, right? Feral cats. Their numbers go up and up and up and up until they peak out maybe around 24 hours when they've gone through all the food in there. Then their numbers start to go down and down and down and down and down and down. And you want to harvest and stop the compost tea process like right at the peak point when there's the most amount of microbes in there. And this is about after 24 hours. So, you know, if you're working or something, you could do it at 20 hours, or you're gonna have to wait till it's like 30 hours. I would do it a couple hours early instead of a couple hours late. We're gonna try to let this run as close to 24 hours as I can, and then we're gonna come back and harvest this and actually just you know, infuse our garden beds with the compost tea. Because if you do not, once you stop the process, you want to take the air stones out, clean them, and then you want to immediately use the compost tea in the garden. You don't want it just to like, oh, I brewed it for 24 hours like John said, we're gonna take the air stones out, but now I'm gonna let it sit here for another couple days or hours. No, don't do that. Use it before you lose it. That goes for more things than just the compost tea. So we're gonna go ahead and let this run for 24 hours, and we're gonna come back tomorrow and we're gonna show you guys how easy it is to distribute the compost tea into the garden. So as you guys can see, the compost is bubbling. It's the next day in almost 24 hours. And now we're gonna go ahead and harvest and use our compost tea. So the first thing to do is you're gonna go ahead and pull out the air stones. This one actually looks pretty clean, not a lot of particulate in there. You're gonna wanna probably bubble in some clean water. We're gonna go ahead and pull this one out of the bag. This one's probably gonna be a little dirtier. So we'll maybe dunk it in the compost tea to try to wash it off a little bit. Now your compost tea may or may not foam a little bit. I mean, this foamed a little bit. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. It shouldn't foam if it's really good, you know. As long as you bubble it properly, like about 24 hours, and you're using fresh, good compost tea, it's gonna be good stuff. So next, let's go ahead and take this and share with you guys how I'm gonna apply it to the garden here. So now we got the bucket of compost tea here. The first thing, you're gonna go ahead and take your tea bag out. Then I like to put this over a raised bed, or in this case a wine barrel, and then I like to just take out all the soil and stuff that was inside the tea brew and dump it in the bed. I mean, basically this stuff is some super enriched, you know, brewed soil. So I like to feed that to the bed. The next thing, we're gonna go ahead and take our bucket here. Oops. Don't spill the compost tea. And we're just gonna go ahead and pour it into a watering can. Now I poured it over the barrel here because I don't have a funnel. And if I overspilled any, which I spilled a lot, it went into the bed to feed this plant. So this would probably be one of the healthiest plants here in just a few weeks. Anyways, let's go ahead and take this out to the garden and water the garden. So the easiest way to apply the compost tea is just simply water it in. I don't like to dilute my compost tea, you know, I'll just make a second batch and I just try to get around to every plant and, you know, maybe get a little bit of the leaves and get mainly by the soil. You know, there's beneficial bacteria in the compost teas that may help prevent things like powdery mildew and other bad bacteria on your plants. Plus, this is gonna, you know, enrich the soil microbiome in there to help get the organic matter broken down into nutrients that your plants can absorb. Plus, this has small concentrations of the trace minerals that are ever so important. So I just got done adding all the compost tea just through a standard watering can. Super simple, super easy. If you're looking for other ways to apply the compost tea, check the links down below. I'll put a link to a video where Josh and I go over some of the best ways to apply the compost tea. I just kind of like the watering can method myself. I'm about to head back to my garden, so I can't wait to get back, but I'm sure next time I come back to visit this garden, do the compost tea and some other things I've added to the garden this trip, it's going to be looking a lot healthier. And I know a lot of you guys out there may not have tried compost tea before. I want to let you guys know you guys should try it before you knock it. You know, there's people out there that say compost tea doesn't do anything. I guarantee you guys it will absolutely do something. It'll increase the growth. I've seen it, and a lot of my other viewers have seen it too. And this is especially important if your soil is not of the highest quality with the most, you know, biologic microbes going on in there, which in my opinion most are not, because people are tilling and they're using, you know, bagged soils that's not fully broken down, and they don't have a variety of different trace minerals and, you know, different things going in to make their compost. And I think compost tea could only help, and unless you brew it properly or make a bad compost tea, maybe using some manures that are anaerobic instead of aerobic, then I think they're probably a good thing. But yeah, also check the link down below for the open source video. And if you want to just buy your own compost tea setup, including the pump and the Boogie Brew compost tea, check out boogiebrew.net/GYG. I'll also put a link down below to that, so you can actually buy your own compost tea, the same one that I've been using for years now with very good results. Actually, I got to get back to my garden and hit it up with some compost tea from my new plantings so it can also thrive this year. If you guys had good experiences with compost tea, hey, please post your comments down below. I'd love to hear them and see what you guys think. Also be sure to like this video if you like this format, and also be sure to click the subscribe button right down below to be notified of my new and upcoming episodes that have coming out about every 3 to 4 days. And be sure to check my past episodes. They are a wealth of knowledge and have over 1,100 episodes at this time. So anyways, once again, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing. So next, we're going to go ahead and set up the irrigation. And you guys might be thinking, John, you know, setting up those raised beds, that's super simple. You put out those frames and fill with some dirt, hand mix it, yeah.